All right, so if you get out your social studies packet, we're going to go ahead and turn to Lesson 5, Early English Communities, which is located on page 118. You'll notice that we have a lot more vocabulary in this section than we did in our last section. And anytime we have academic vocabulary, it will have the word and definition in the sidebar. So words that we're going to keep an eye out for will be drought, debt, interpreter, Quaker, pilgrim, require, and crucial. Okay, and by the time we're done with this review of this section, you'll be able to know why settlers came from England to North America. And it says, North American exploration meant that the Spanish and French had new lands to settle. The English wanted to settle too. And then we have a picture with a caption, and it says, Roanoke, that's Roanoke colony, found abandoned. So abandoned means nobody was left there when they found it. So if it was found abandoned, but it was already a colony, that means somebody had been there, but when they came back, no one was left. All right, so if we turn our page, we have Roanoke Colony. Make sure you move your packet so you can still see all the words. Okay. Sir Walter Raleigh sent English settlers to Roanoke Island in present-day North Carolina in 1587. Okay, so Raleigh, that is what Raleigh, North Carolina is named after the settler who started the colony, Sir Walter Raleigh. So John White was in charge of setting up the colony when supplies were required. White returned to England but did not come back to Roanoke until 1590. So required, it's a highlighted, bold vocabulary term. It is academic vocabulary, so we will find it in the sidebar. Require, it's a verb, V for verb, and it means to need. So we can read that. When supplies were required, or when supplies were needed, White returned to England, but did not come back to Roanoke until 1590. So it took him 3 years to come back. On his return, White found the word Croatian carved on a tree, and all of the 113 settlers gone. What happened to the settlers of the Roanoke colony remains a mystery. Some scientists believe a drought or not enough water led to the colony's end. Others think that the settlers went to live with American Indians or that they died from disease or hunger. So nobody knows what happened. But a lot of people are still trying to figure it out. So Jamestown. In 1607, 105 English settlers arrived in what is now Virginia. They named their colony Jamestown after King James I. Long before the English came, American Indians built villages and planted crops in Virginia. Soon after the settlers arrived, they ran out of food. Colony leader Captain John Smith searched for food, but American Indians captured him. Smith was taken to the chief, Powhatan. One legend says Smith's life was saved by Powhatan's daughter, Pocahontas. When Smith returned to Jamestown, only about 38 settlers were still alive. The rest had died of hunger and disease. So life was not very easy in our early colonies. There was a lot of people who died because they just did not have the right supplies or enough supplies. So England's, and it says colonies. Okay, so make sure you're adjusting so you can see the ending of words anytime you need to. So England's colonies. The Roanoke colonists vanished. Colonist means people of, so people of the colony. The Roanoke colonists vanished, and many of the Jamestown colonists died. Still, the English did not give up. They would go on to settle 13 colonies, and we have been studying those 13 colonies. So by the 1660s, some settlers had moved south and set up Carolina, in present-day North and South Carolina. Settlers to the southern colonies brought enslaved Africans with them. The enslaved people were forced to farm the land. So they were not paid to do it. They had to do it or else. In 1733, James Oglethorpe founded the Georgia colony. He set up this colony to help people who were in prison for not paying a debt. A debt is money that is owed to another person. So in England, they had at this time what was called debtors' prisons, where if you owe people money and they said, hey, pay me, and you didn't have the money, they put you into this prison where you would have to work. And it was not a very nice place to live. So this was set up as a alternative or a different way you could pay off your debt. People owing debts settled in Georgia. Oglethorpe wanted to give them a chance to start a new life in his colony. Mary Musgrove also played a key role in the founding of Georgia. Musgrove, a member of the Creek Nation, which was one of our tribes of Native Americans, served as an interpreter for Oglethorpe. As an interpreter, she helped the English and Native Americans communicate with each other because she was able to speak both languages. She helped the Native Americans and the English get along and keep peace. Okay, so we have our map here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can see it nice and large. You should be familiar with this map. We've talked about it a lot. So we have a few different regions, but only 3 that are in our legend. So I'm going to review the parts that are not in our legend to start with. So we have the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so that's going to be our blue. Okay, we have Spanish Florida and all the region that is not part of our 13 colonies. We have lakes. So these are the Great Lakes, Lake Ontario, which is now bordering our country and Canada. We have Lake Erie, Lake Huron, okay? And then we have our 13 colonies. So our New England colonies include Massachusetts. That's a lot bigger than current day Massachusetts. New Hampshire, also a lot bigger. Rhode Island, okay? And Connecticut. Notice that Massachusetts, according to this map, is both this area right here and this part here, which is mostly Canada and Maine today. Okay, so then we have our middle colonies, which is New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. And everything after is our southern colonies. So Virginia, notice Virginia today is now Virginia and West Virginia, but here it's all one. And then we have North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Okay, so remember we have our compass rose. Never eat soggy waffles. North, east, south, and west. And we have here a little tiny map. So what this map says is, hey, this part right here, that's this part here. So this is where we are if we're looking at a bigger map. Okay, so let's see. And we have a reading check question. And it says, reading check 1, identify and circle the names of the southern colonies on the map. So you are only going to circle the southern colonies on this map. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out. And we're going to move on to the next page. Pause as if you need more time. All right, so the next page, our next heading is settling the middle colonies. Okay, so New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware are the middle colonies. Ooh, notice it says New York, New Jersey. That's because in England, there already was a York. There already was a Jersey. So when they got to America, they're like, hey, this reminds me of home. So I can't call it York because that's in England. But I can call it New York. Okay. Same with New Jersey. Okay. So can you guess how they got this name? They are right between the southern and colonies and the colonies in the north. So they're in the middle of the two. It's like a sandwich. So in 1664, Holland lost the land that would later become three of the middle colonies in a war against the English. The Duke of York got one part of the land. Remember, reminds him of home. He's naming it after himself. He named it New York after himself. The Duke gave another part of his land to two friends. These other parts eventually became the colonies of New Jersey and Delaware. Pennsylvania, however, was started in a very different way. William Penn started the colony of Pennsylvania. Notice William Penn, Pennsylvania, as a holy experiment. Penn was a Quaker. A Quaker is a follower of a religion that believes in peace and equal treatment for all people. Many people came to Penn's colony. People from Germany and Ireland were among the first settlers to come there for religious freedom, because at this time, they couldn't really believe what they wanted to believe and practice their religions without getting in some really big trouble and possibly dying for it. Okay, so Benjamin Franklin was one of the most famous people who lived in Pennsylvania. Okay, so specifically he lived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Okay, he moved there because there were many more opportunities than his home city of Boston, Massachusetts. Wherever Franklin went, he tried to make it a better place to live. He began Philadelphia's first fire department. Thanks to Franklin, Philadelphia became a safer city. Okay, so we have our picture. It is a real place, and it's a Philadelphia's community honors Ben Franklin's contribution of the city's first fire department. So that's a statue of the head of Benjamin Franklin wearing a modern day fire hat. So we have a reading check, and it says choose one of the middle colonies and explain how it was started. So remember, our middle colonies are New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. All right, so pause the video as you need and turn to the next page when you are ready. All right, so our last page of information that we're reading for this video is New England colonies. Okay, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire were called the New England colonies. In 1620, William Bradford led a group of pilgrims on board a ship called the Mayflower. And we talked about this back in November at Thanksgiving. So a pilgrim is a person who travels for a religious reason. 66 days later, they landed in present-day Massachusetts. They came to the colonies to be free to follow their religion. Remember, they could not do that in England, and they could not do that in most of Europe at this time. So, first the Pilgrims formed a community in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Then they wrote a plan of government called the Mayflower Compact. It said the colonists would make laws for the good of the community. A crucial part, crucial, that's an academic vocabulary word. So it's an adjective, it means very important. So a crucial part of the plan was that everyone agreed to obey the laws. So we could also read that as a very important part of the plan was that everyone agreed to obey the laws. This was the first time European colonists in America had made laws for themselves. So this was very important, the Mayflower Compact. Bradford became the leader. He was a good leader. The Pilgrims and people of the local Wampanoag Nation began trading food and other items. Squanto, a Wampanoag who spoke English, served as an interpreter. Remember, that means you can communicate from one language into another language. In 1621, the Pilgrims and the Wampanoags sat down to share a harvest feast. Today, we mark this as the first Thanksgiving. A woman named Anne Hutchinson did not follow the Pilgrims' beliefs. She began spreading her own beliefs. As a result, in 1634, she was forced to leave Massachusetts. She later founded Portsmouth, Rhode Island. Okay, and we have our reading check. And it says sequence. So that means putting things in order. Identify and underline the first and second things the Pilgrims did when they came to America. So what was the first thing? What was the second thing? We also have a picture, is a painting with a caption. Caption tells about the picture. The Mayflower Compact was the first plan of government written in the colonies. All right, so if we turn to the next page, pause the video if you need more time. I'm going to go over our 2 required questions. So, main idea and details. Complete the chart with the details that support the main idea. Identify the needs that cause people to form communities. So our main idea was life was difficult for the colonists. Why was it difficult? What was another reason? What was the third reason why life was difficult or hard for the early colonists? Then we need to identify. So we're going to tell one reason the English settled in the Americas. Then we're going to explain why that reason is still important to us today. So you might say, one reason the English settled in the Americas is blank, fill in that blank, because why? Or one reason the English settled in the Americas is blank, you're going to fill that in, period. This reason is still important to us today because, and then fill in that next blank, period. If you choose to answer question 6, it says, describe how Benjamin Franklin changed his community by starting Philadelphia's first fire department. All right, and that is the end of lesson 5 for this chapter.